Hello, this is Cherry in Florida, showing you my, well, I called it a grandfather clock, but it's too small to be a grandfather clock. It's about 3 feet tall, so I called it a baby grandfather clock. And it's basically 3 boxes that all come together. This is the top part of the clock, and the bottom part is here, which I'll show you in a moment, and this part here, which I'm going to finish off while you're watching. I've put parts of it together to save time because it would take forever to do this all on camera, and it's made from chipboard. It's not chipboard actually, it's matboard, 2 layers of it. The matboard actually I buy from my art shop, and it's very smooth, fine but firm matboard, and it's probably, this particular kind is probably made for making books, but you could use regular matboard, I'm sure. And I used these graphic 45 papers to cover it. In this case I happen to have a couple of books of this one. I think it's called World Fair, something, yes, World Fair, something like that. But you could cover it in whatever paper you wanted, or spray paint it, or just use the natural coloured mat boards or whatever it is that you already have. So that's what I used for that. It's going to have a pendulum movement, you'll see that. And I'm going to pause this a minute before I go any further and show you the file on InDesign Space. So I'll see you in a moment. So here we're looking at the file for the baby grandfather clock. You can see that this one is just done in black, just plain. This is matboard, 2 layers of it. This is matboard with underneath, which you could either paint that light colour or find a matboard in the colour you like, or cover it in a piece of paper, which I did, to show through whatever colour you wanted it to be. So this is the sort of plain version. As you know, I did mine in graphic 45 papers. So I had a simpler version of the separating parts here on mine, and also mine has different scroll patterns on than these. That's because that scroll pattern is from a cartridge that isn't available anymore. So if you have that version, you have to have that cartridge, which is, I think that's the one that's the Gypsy. Yes, that's definitely the one that's the Gypsy cartridge. So if you owned a Gypsy anytime, you can make version number 1, and I'll post both of them. If you never owned a Gypsy and you don't have those cartridges, this is a scroll that's in Access. The window is where I put the perspex that I told you about. The clock face is one that we've used a few times before. As I say, all these pieces are cut out of matboard. It managed it very well. And this one has its own integral feet, and these are the construction strips again, which you would cut in a paper that matches whatever you're doing. So if you made it in craft, you'd use craft ones, and black ones, and so on. In my case, I had a long spindle, as I told you, so these are the extra pieces of, I think I cut them out of matboard, or you could do it from chipboard, that I put between the clock and the battery compartment at the back here, to make it so that it didn't stick out too far at the front. And that's probably all that I need to tell you on this. This is pretty straightforward. As I told you, it makes 3 boxes that fit on top of each other. these are the decorative strips that separate the 3 boxes. And I think that's all you probably need to know. So there we are. We'll get back to making the clock, and I'll see you again in a moment. Okay, so I've shown you the file and all the pieces, and this piece is more or less finished, except we're going to put the magnets and the door on the back. And you can see there's a hole here for the pendulum to swing through. And there's this piece, which is the base, which has the feet, and you can see it's a pierced design, again in 2 layers of matboard because I wanted it nice and solid, and sandwiched in between those 2 pieces of matboard is my contrast graphic 45 papers, and on each side I've put these decorative strips to cover the seams and bring it all together. And I'm now going to show you how I'm going to put the window part together, and the top of that has again, well, it will in a moment, has the hole for the pendulum to swing through, and that's going to fix onto here. And I've used construction strips, as in all my clocks, on both the inside of the seams and on, in this case anyway, on the outside of the seams as well. So it's just black cardstock on the inside of the seams, but as I said, I had decorative graphic 45 on the outside. So I put the construction strips in place on the inside. Oh, and by the way, I forgot, I also lined this one with graphic 45 papers so that it matched when you looked through the window. I didn't put those in the pattern, that's an optional choice, and you can cut them to fit yours if you want to, or you can just leave it plain or spray paint it a different colour or something like that. So we're going to put this part on here, make sure we get it the right way round, and I'm going to glue it firstly down to these construction strips which I've already put here, and I'm just using Aleene's glue for this. I tend to use 2 or 3 different glues, as I've mentioned before in my clock videos. This one for the finer things. I use Fabri-Tac for large flat pieces of paper where I don't want glue lines to show through, and when it's just basic gluing construction strips together, I just use my Aleene's, which is less costly than the art glitter glue. So I'm just putting glue on each of these strips at the moment. I will show you here so far, and then I'm going to put that roof piece on this particular box part with the gap in it for the pendulum. So make sure you're right up to the edges so that it fits nice and firmly, and I'm going to put that into place here, and I'm going to push that firmly into place, and I'm going to come through the window here and push underneath here. This is rather large and it's quite difficult to get it all in on camera at the same time, but I hope you get the general idea. Perhaps if I put it this way around, you can see I'm coming inside and I'm pushing all those seams together to make sure they're firmly stuck, and also make sure You're nice and square on the top, which I'm not at the moment, but I will be. And when you're happy with that's in position, then I'm going to put the other construction strips on the outside of the seams, which are going to be here. And I didn't make all the construction strips all exactly the right size. You can trim them down as you go, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to start with that one and glue it onto there. So let's go here, and you can see again that's how I do it. Just put the glue and put that on this back seam first, again making sure that all the pieces are properly aligned. I don't quite like that one. I'm going to lift it off slightly, move it over a little bit, that's better. You want all your corners as square as you can make them, or your clock isn't going to look. Yes, I'm going to re-adhere this piece. It's because I'm doing it on camera. I haven't quite got it exactly where I want it. So I'll put a little bit more glue under there. It's never as easy to do it on camera as it is when you're just sitting, which is why I've done quite a few parts of it before I came to you, because not only would it take a long time, you can't be quite so precise as you'd like to be when you're trying to show people what you're doing and put it on in exactly the right place. I like that better. So but you get the idea, and this piece can go on here now. And that needs a slight trim. I like these Tim Holtz snips. They're very good for cutting all sorts of things. And I'm going to adhere these front two pieces, which you have to cut to size, just to fit onto those short pieces here. And then when I've adhered those, before I put the last two pieces on, I'm just going to make sure it's inside. And it feels pretty good. And now I'm going to just put these last two pieces on here. And I'm going to have to cut two pieces down to size, so I don't have the right size pieces for this. So make sure that's stuck. That will be about this size. And I need two of them that long, so I'll cut a second one. I guess you can't see me doing that. I just cut them to the size of the which is actually 7 inches. In case you're interested, 7 inches deep. But you don't have to be perfect to the size. Just so that it covers it nice and cleanly, which it does. There we are, done this side, and I'm just going to do this one. So this is the inner shell of the clock at the moment, the plain part, and I'm going to adhere the outer shell, the pierced ornamental pieces, on top. So let me show you the window where the pendulum is going to show through. And that's complete. So it's here. You see it here all the time. Now the window is this pierced pattern, and I usually use acetate for this part, but in this case I used a piece of perspex which I got from Amazon, and it was 1/16 of an inch thick. I think I could have used 1/32 of an inch and it still would have been a nice solid piece, but I wanted something a bit more solid on this clock than just acetate this time, because it's quite a big clock, so I bought this. I didn't dare cut it on my maker yet. I'm not sure that it would cut it. It may be too hard for the maker. So I snipped it into shape, because it was only a square with, believe it or not, these. And I'm sure there's better ways of doing it. Maybe with a Dremel or a little saw, or heavy duty craft knife or something like that. But I snipped it into shape. I think if you had the 1/32 thick, 1/32 of an inch thick, it would be easier to deal with. But anyway, there it is, and I rather like it. It's nice and shiny and clean. And this goes on here, and it's slightly framed by the matching piece of paper underneath, and this window is slightly smaller than this one, just so that it gives it a nice border when it's stuck, and you'll see how that looks when I stuck it and show it to you. So I'm going to do that next. This time on these parts here, I'm going to use my art glitter glue, because I think it's better for finer details. And I put it all around those. Make sure you get down to all the ends and corners and edges of all of that. And you have to work fairly quickly, or these pieces will start to dry before you've applied the glue to the rest of it. So, and there's a piece here that's separated and is 4-ply. Matboard will do that sometimes. I don't know if you can see, but you watch for those as you go along and just firmly stick them back together. It doesn't do that a lot, but occasionally some of the smaller parts will flake a little, and you just need to glue the layers back down together. I think, no, that one's okay, but, and so when you've done all of that, I'm going back to the Aleen's just for the rest of it, and I'm going to stick it around the whole frame fairly liberally. Right up to the edges, because I don't want it to lift. And also the edge of this frame, though be careful you don't get any on the acetate or the perspex if you're using what I'm using, because that will make marks on your glass or your window, should I say, not glass. And let me make sure. That's it, liberal application all over it. And then I'm going to stand up so I can see what I'm doing. I can get off this chair. And I'm going to lay it flat on here, match up all the corners, and stick it down firmly, especially these pattern parts. I don't want those lifting either. And making sure that it's nice and even, the frame that shows through. And there we are. Let that dry for a moment. And this corner looks a little bit like it wants to come away, so I'm going to just apply a little bit to the corner. Make sure that sticks down nice and firmly. And the art glitter glue is good for that too, because it seems to have a firmer hold for those small pieces. So I'm going inside the box and I'm going to push underneath the pattern parts and make sure they all stick nice and firmly. I do find that you need to go all over these clocks afterwards and check any little small parts of the pattern pieces, and if they aren't stuck, you need to go under with this fine tip of your glue and stick them down. And let's see, that piece, I probably didn't give it long enough to stick, but just to show you, that's the sort of thing. And push them down firmly into place. And that seems like it's going pretty well. So now it's these two side pieces that look like this. And I know which way they go up by the, you can't see, it's quite faint on here, but the pattern of the paper goes in one direction, so the round tall bits are the top. And that I'm just sticking, because there's no, I've already stuck the patterned bits down to the paper, which by the way I just adhered to the back. And I'm going to do the same thing, stick both of those on. Plenty of glue. Make sure it's not going to come off anywhere, and plenty down the edges, but not so much that it's going to squeeze out, make a mess. So something that looks a bit like that. And that is going on this side. And I'm going to tip it up so that, again, I get it nice and square. That's that one. Give it a few seconds to stick. Hello again. I left you because my battery ran out on my camera, and while you were away I went ahead and covered the other three sides of this centerpiece, and I've started to put these strips down the edges, which are not only decorative but they cover up any uneven seams. So I don't know if I mentioned it when I was in the design space file, but I included both these strips and some alternative decorative strips, and it really depends on taste and choice, and whether you do a patterned paper like I did, or whether you choose to use plain coloured or painted matte board. So you'll see those when you're in the file. So we're just going to stick this last one on, here, and I'm going to use this particular type of glue again, the art glitter glue, because it's easier to put on all the little edges, and also it sticks quite firmly for pieces like this that you don't want to raise up and come off later. And so I'm just doing that, and then this, when I put this on, the centerpiece will be, or center section will be finished. And it's going to go there. So I try and line it up evenly at the top and bottom, make sure it sticks firmly, and that gives a nice clean edge, and also, as I say, adds a bit of decoration as well. And there's the centre section finished, and the pendulum is going to come down through here. The pendulum is here, and it's going to attach to the clock movement and come down through this window here, which you'll see in a moment. And so finally, with that one out of the way, this is a very large clock, so it's difficult to move it out of the way, but get over there a bit. We have this, which I finished at the front, and by the way, you can see I added a little bit of extra decoration of my own. I put some gold paper under the, or gold cardstock actually, under the 12, the 6, the 9 and the 3, just to make it a little bit different. I actually coloured the hands of my clock with a black Sharpie to make those a little different too. You can probably see that. The clock hands that came with the pendulum were really rather smaller than I wanted them to be, so I decorated them a bit to make them sort of match in and stand out afterwards. And all I've got left to do to this one is to put the door on the back that gives access to the battery of the clock, which actually I'm just going to pause you and get the battery and put it in, because I find it's easier than trying to poke it through the door later. So I'm back with the battery. This particular pendulum movement I actually got in Joann's and used a coupon, so that it was quite a reasonable price. I think it was something like $10.99 full price, and then I used a 50% off coupon. So I've got my battery in there, so the clock should be moving. I've maybe put the battery in the wrong way up or something. Let me just check. I really need for this part to be on camera, me fiddling around with the battery, so maybe I will put it in afterwards through the door, because I don't want to mess around. But that would be basically it. And so the door part is here. This is the basic door. I found a little decorative piece from my Graphic 45 cutout piece, and I mounted that on a piece of chipboard, and I'm going to put that on my door as well. And this is going to be the part that's going to have the magnets under it that attaches to the main part of the clock, so that the door will close. And what I've done so far is, it was just a piece of, and I'll make sure it is in the pattern, but it's just a piece of chipboard, or rather matboard. I put a piece of cardstock that's scored like this. Well, it doesn't have to be scored actually, it was just a piece that was left over from one of these strips, and I put that because when I attach it to the door, it will just have more to adhere to keep it in place. So it's going to go under there and it will attach like that. And then I'm going to put the other piece and sandwich the magnets in just a little piece of black cardstock that's going to stick on the back. So that's all going to go there, and those are going to go under there, and the magnets will go on the back of this piece here. So I thought I had my magnets nearby, so excuse me a moment while I just fetch them. And this is my supply of magnets, which I've mentioned before, that I usually get on eBay, but you can get them all over the place. They're extra strong magnets, they're called neodymium, and I get them in various sizes, and I'm going to use I think 4 of this size, 2 on the back and 2 on the door. And so I will sandwich those first. So I'll take the top one and I'm going to put those in here. Let me just attach this first to my door catch. Make sure you go right up to the edges. That's going in there first. And then the magnets I'm going to adhere on here. Like that. Don't put them too close together because the poles will push each other apart. And then I'm going to put this on top of them to keep them in place, and I'm going to put the glue right up to the edges as well as all across the middle. Make sure those are firmly adhered in place. So I now have the 2 magnets sandwiched in this piece here. It's my decorative catch on the back of my clock and door, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to put this piece here and this piece with those inside. And I picked up the other 2 magnets while I was doing it, which I don't want to do. So I'll stick that down first and show you what I'm going to do. It needs to go over, let's see, this has got to be central, and so the magnets are going to go about there. So I will roughly stick those into place first. And the glue doesn't want to come out. Come on, that's better. I may have to go back to the other glue. Nope, it's not coming out. Let's give it a little shake up. I'm going to add a little bit of this just for speed because you're watching, because that'll work too, and a little bit under here, and then I'm going to position it while it's still, make sure that this frame is in the right place, and that looks about central here. I will show you in a minute, and I can pick it up without it falling off. and then I'm going to glue this on top. And I'll show you when it's all stuck together and you'll see what I mean. And that will go there. And I'm going to adhere this door. Let's turn this around to make a nasty noise. To this with, I'm going to use black masking tape in this case, which I can't see that I have on my table. I thought I was all prepared. I will go and find it and come back to you. And I'm back again with the masking tape. This I also find on eBay. This particular one is 1 inch wide. You don't have to have this. You could use construction strips, or you could put little hinges on, which if you wanted to. I've done that before. But you've got to remember, you're not going to be opening this door very frequently, so it doesn't have to be that an efficient, it doesn't have to have strong hinges or anything like that. So I'm just going to use this black masking tape, and I'm going to and I've lost the other piece of my door now too. I do apologise, I'm not being very efficient today, but I'm going to put the black masking tape on here, like that, the edges to match. I'm going to find the other piece of the door that goes on the back of this one, and I can't see it at the moment, but I could cut another piece, I suppose, rather than go searching around the house for it. Anyway, I will pause you a little moment again whilst I just find the correct door piece that goes with this one. And I'm back. I found it. It wasn't very far away. And I'm going to put tape on the other way around as well. On this piece as well. Like that. Actually, I don't like that. That's too far down. Let's put it a bit further up. And then those two are going to stick together like that with the tape facing outwards, and are going to attach to the clock. And if that's not firm enough, I will put a construction strip on it as well, but we'll see. So those two pieces of door have to stick together, and we'll use just this glue here. And that's that. That's going to go there. And then these are going to, make sure I've got them lined up properly. Whoops. The glue's not quite stuck. And these are going to go make sure I've got it right. one's going to go there. Actually, I wanted it to go on the inside, now it goes on the outside. So I'll put another piece of tape facing the other way. So I want a piece that's going to connect this way and sandwich it on the... Sorry if I'm confusing you all. It's one of those days. So this piece, let me show you a bit carefully, closer. So I've got this piece here sticky on this side. I've got this piece, whoops, it's sticky on this side as well. This piece is going to go inside here. And I should do it while I've got it this way up so that I can, I don't want to squash my clock either. Let me do it over here. And that's going to go on there, and I can reach inside and press that into place. And then this outer piece of door is going to go on top of this piece of tape here and sandwich that into place. First I have to put glue on it, and meanwhile of course make sure your latch is in the wrong place, but also we've got to find where the magnets go as well. Before we do that, let's prop it up against that so I'm not squashing the... And I know you can't see that very well. Let's try it around this way a bit more. Maybe you can see now. We've got to put the magnets on here to match the ones we've got inside there first. And they've jumped up and disappeared. I'll get two more out for now. They've probably adhered to something else that I don't want them to be, like a pair of scissors or something. So what you need to do is stick these on here first to make sure you know where they need to go. So they're stuck under there where they need to go. And then I'm going to put a little tiny piece of glue, spot of glue on them. Which I don't know if you can see me doing, but tiny spot of glue, I'll show you in a second. This is to place, get your magnets in the right place. So there's my spots of glue. I'm going to close the door against the, like that. And when I open the door again, there will be little spots of glue where those magnets need to go. It looks like that. Now I'm going to remove these, make sure I keep them the right way up, and I'm going to put them, this is fiddly to do on camera, but I'm going to put them where they need to be. There. Make sure I've got it the right way up. There. And before I do anything else, actually I'm going to remove this for a second. I should have done that bit first. Only I can't. I may have to put a new piece of tape on because I've messed it up trying to show you that. And I will put another piece on because that one... But anyway, meanwhile, these magnets are now in the right place. And before they move out of place, I'm going to put a piece of tape over those before I stick the back frame on. So I'm going to put a piece of tape over those and keep those in place. So now those magnets are firmly in the right place to match the door. I'm going to put another piece of tape on here, having messed that up, trying to show you. It's one of those mornings, but just to show you when you're making things that it's not all straightforward, slick and easy for me either. I do mess things up as I go along, and it's all a learning process, and I try and get that part of the learning done before I show it to you, so that you don't make the same or encounter the same problem. So I'm sticking this back inside and I'm pushing it up from underneath to make sure it is in the right place. It's not quite. The tape. It's probably just as easy to use a construction strip, quite honestly, but sometimes I use tape. I think I've got that in the right place now, and I'm going to stick this one over the top. But first, make sure your catch is, and it's going to go like that. So I'm going to glue that on, and I'll do that. Make sure that piece of tape, I'm going to stick that piece of tape here too. I'm going to put another piece of tape over that, because I think it'll stick it down firmer than just sticking it to the back of the frame. I'm going to put this piece over here. So and that's there. And you could use duct tape as well, because none of it's going to show when you've finished. And it's just a little bit more flexible tape than these construction strips when it's on a door. That's all I feel. And now I'm going to glue this into place, and that should have all these three pieces finished. So, same process, go all the way right to the edge. Right, that looks fairly well glued. Oh, I don't like this side, I'm just going to put it all there. Plenty of glue, liberal with it. Make sure, oh, you don't want it oozing out, but at the same time you want to make sure it's a nice firm grip. Lift your catch over the top, but make sure the door is underneath. And that goes in there like that. Well, that seems to be it. And mine is like that. And then, when that's stuck firmly, it'll be a matter of putting the decorative strips on the edges, which I will do off camera, but here they are, 4 of those, or really decorative construction strips I suppose I should call them, around all the edges, which I'm going to do off camera in a moment, and I'll come back to you to show you the final putting the whole clock together. So my camera stopped again, and I'm going to have to make sure I use a different camera next time I record a tutorial. But here's the finished clock, and I'll give you a few more details on how I put it together. Let's see if I can get it in the light a bit better from this angle. I joined each of the 3 sections together on their flat surfaces with Beacon 3-in-1 or Fabri-Tac. I think they're the same glue, as I've said before, but you could use various different glues. You could use hot glue, you could use E6000 or even probably a good strong white glue would work, because they're large flat surfaces joined together. And between each of the sections I've added these decorative strips of matching paper on top of matboard, just to make it all neat and tidy and look like one piece rather than three separate pieces. I've attached the pendulum, as you can see, which, as I said, was from Joann's. It was quite inexpensive and easy to use. And there is the top of the clock in detail. And I don't think there's a great deal. Oh, what I probably will do is cover this piece of perspex with its original plastic, and I'll use this Mod Podge spray to spray over the whole thing to make it a little more durable against light or damp or so on. And that really, oh, and one last thing, you'll see that the face has some decorative pieces added, which are really just, I saved all the pieces that came out of these cutouts and put the relevant papers on them, and I saved them all because I'll probably use them to decorate other objects. But I used one of the top side pieces at the top here, and this particular decorative piece here I cut in half and used to decorate the top side pieces as well. So I hope you like my baby grand clock, and I'm just off to start another clock for your enjoyment, and I'll see you again soon. Bye from me.